Are you looking to up your real estate investing game? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Sub 2 Deals Show with your host, Sub 2 expert William Tingle.
Hey, Sub 2ers, this is William Tingle of sub2deals.com. I'd like to welcome you to today's episode of the Sub 2 Deals Show. I'm really excited today. We've got a guest here that's super knowledgeable in pretty much every aspect of real estate investing, Mr. Bill Walston. If you guys have been on any of our Facebook groups or been around for any length of time, you've probably already heard of him. If you haven't, you're in for a real treat today. Bill has a history with being a CPA, an accountant, and he had so many real estate investor clients. He just, saw the incredible amount of money they were making and just decided that maybe he was on the wrong side of the desk. So he made a change, and he's been investing for over 30 years, doing everything from lease options to subject to. And today we're going to talk about lease options. I know some of you guys like to buy on lease option and certainly sell your properties that you get either subject to or buying for cash or however you buy those. And so I thought I'd bring him in to talk about that. He's certainly an expert. So I'd like to welcome you, Bill. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
William, man, I am delighted to be here with you. I love following what you're doing, and I was really interested when you said you were starting up a podcast. Kudos to you, and I appreciate the invite, and we're going to have some fun today. Like you said, I've been investing for over 30 years. I do have a background in the finance and accounting side, but I love the fact that I've been an investor. I've been doing all types of deals, and I have worked with my clients in all types of areas, particularly in deal structure, which is one of the things that I most enjoy about real estate investing, man, the art of the deal.
Yeah, I totally agree. When it comes to real estate investing, I always say that once I find the deal, put it together, figure out, how we're going to make it work, and I sort of lose interest at that point. That's really my favorite part. So I understand what you're talking about.
Absolutely. That's the as my kids used to say, the funnest part, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. Well, listen, I really was excited to bring you on today to talk about lease options. When I got started in real estate investing, I actually tried out buying with lease options and sold dozens on lease option, but I just never really had the kind of success other people seem to maybe have, especially you have with it. And so I went to all owner financing. So not being an expert on lease options, obviously, I wanted to bring someone on that was to talk about that. So you do lease options. Can you tell me just a little bit about why you like lease options so much?
Sure. Well, I started with lease options and sub 2 deals when I got started because you may remember some of this back in the day when the prime rate was like 21%. back in the mid 80s.
I'm just about old enough to remember.
Man, so I kind of cut my teeth on anything where we didn't have to go and get institutional financing, and so of course lease options was one of those. And if you put it together properly, right, they can be really, really good things because it gives you the way to get into a property with little to no money down, right? And the nice thing about it was it limited the risk for most newbies. And I think that's what they appreciate the most, that if the deal goes bad, you're in a lease, right? And you're not obligated. So it gives them a good out, so to speak, a legal out, but an out nonetheless. So they don't have a lot at risk when they take over with that. And of course, like you, I finally cut my teeth on seller financing and found out that was best for me. But I still sell a lot with lease option deals, right? Yeah. So that's where I'm still using them. I do on occasion still do a lease option on the acquisition side, but not quite as much as I used to.
Right. Well, like I said, I used to do lease options too, and switched over now to pretty much selling everything on a land contract or contract for deed. Now, as an investor, can you explain what the difference for me would be if I chose to sell on a lease option versus selling on a land contract? What would the difference mean to me as far as how I have to pay taxes at the end of the year?
Okay, well, not only is it from a tax standpoint, but it's also, I think, from the standpoint of getting someone out if they're not paying you, right?
Right.
And that happens on occasion. Okay, so the big difference between selling on a lease option, selling on a land contract is one is an actual sale, and the other is not a sale. It's actually a lease until an option is exercised.
Right.
Okay, so if you are got a tenant buyer or tenant optionee rather in the property, and something does go wrong, they don't exercise their option, they just leave, right? Or if they stop paying, you evict them, which is a lot easier sometimes than a land contract. A land contract is a true sale. And in most states, regardless of how you got that contract structured, you may end up having to evict, to foreclose instead of evict. So it's state by state law, but that's one of the major differences. The other difference for you as an investor, if you're selling or getting rid of your property with one of these items, if it's an installment sale, you have to go ahead and report that sale in the year that it's made, right?
Okay. Right.
So it is a true sale. It's reported as a sale to Internal Revenue Service. Now, it is an installment sale, however, right? So if you had any capital gains or anything like that, that's going to be deferred over the life of the contract.
Right. Okay.
Does that make
Well,
sense?
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It makes sense. I'll tell you, I noticed something in one of the lease option forums, even though, I'm not really using that tool anymore. I'd like to follow what's going on as much as possible. And someone made a comment in one of the groups recently that said there was actually a limit on what you can charge a tenant optionee as option consideration. Now, I was taught to get as much down as you can. I mean,
Yeah,
honestly, some of these courses will tell you, don't even post an amount required. Ask them how much they have and grab it
right.
off. Now, I never went along with that. I always like for the people in my houses to have some extra money in case something comes up, and so they're not living, literally paycheck to paycheck. But my thoughts on it, and what I followed, the rule I followed was always for a lease option, about 5%. But this gentleman that was talking in the forum actually said that some states are starting to limit how much you can collect as option consideration. Is that true?
That is true. And it's very few states that are doing that, but some of them are saying that the option consideration can only be a certain amount of the rent, like 2 times the rent or 3 times the rent. And to be honest, I'm not sure which states are doing that, but there are some. I've seen that. Okay. You and I think, probably learned from some of the same people. It sounds like, because that's been around, like whenever anybody would say, "Oh, well, how much down is it?" And it was like, "Well, how much do you have?"
That's right.
The phrase was, "How much do you have to get into your new property?"
Oh, yeah.
Type thing. Um, I tend to be like you. I stay somewhere between 3 and 5%
Hmm.
of my option fee, and
Right.
regardless of the amount that they have down, believe it or not. And the reason that I do that is not as much that they have more available, or trying to stay into any fixed rule, but the problem I saw over the years was equitable interest. Okay.
Right.
And the more they put down, the more likely it would be that it was determined that they have an equitable interest in the property if it ever came to a court situation. And of course, you and
Right.
I both know that it's a moot point if you never get sued. But what's going to happen, if you put yourself in that position, if a tenant, I keep saying buyer because that's the old phrase, right? It is
Right.
properly a tenant optionee, guys. So excuse me if I get into the old vernacular and call it a tenant buyer. I think you guys will know what I'm talking about. But it's really a moot point unless you have a tenant who decides they're going to walk away from their option. they don't want the property and they want that option to be refunded. Right. And you,
Right.
of course, say it's a non-refundable option fee. They get snippy and want to take you to court and sue you about it. Okay.
Right.
I can guarantee you the more money they put down in that option, the more likely the judge is going to say, oh, dude, this was a down payment. And they get it back because they're not buying the property.
Right.
Okay. And if you're talking like 10% or 15%, man, you might as well sell or finance the property to them. That's a down payment. That's
Oh,
down payment money.
absolutely. I mean, we're only charging 10% down on our land
I
contracts now.
know. Isn't that crazy? And people say, oh, yeah.
Yeah,
And I've seen people say, yeah, I get 15% non-refundable option fee. And I said, you just think it's non-refundable.
that's
If you
right.
get your butt taken to court, that's what's going to happen. So option fees, I stay around 3 to 5%. Down payment, I go up to 10%, 15%. And I'll tell you how I work that. We both talked about selling with a lease option or selling with an option fee. What I generally do is start everybody off with a lease option deal, right? 1 year, lease an option. And if they have paid me consistently at the end of the year when they get ready to exercise their option, I'll come up and say, guys, you've been such a good tenant. I'm going to let you exercise your option, but I'm going to owner finance this property for you.
That's
Right.
great.
And I'll just move them into a land contract. Why should the bank get that extra down payment? If they're going to raise money for a down payment or pay an extra down payment, pay it to me instead of paying it to the bank. All right. And then I will take the option fee. I don't take it. I've already spent that amount, but I will let that option fee apply to that down payment. So I might say down payment's 15%. You've already paid 5%. All you have to do is come up with another 10%, right?
Right.
And it's an installment sale.
And then it doesn't turn into an issue about whether or not the bank will consider a lease option conversion, a refinance or
Right.
not. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I don't mind doing that if it's somebody I know that's going to be paying. So I kind of combine the idea of, okay, I will do a long-term extension or long-term owner finance deal or a lease and option deal. I kind of let them try it out because that lets them and me see how they're going to like the house, how they're going to treat it, and whether they're going to be paying me on time or not. And if they paid me on time for a year, with no problems, I feel very comfortable going ahead and extending it into a land contract.
Right. Yeah, that sounds great. That's a good idea. You know, Another thing that comes up a lot about lease options, and of course, going back to you and I probably learned from the same people. Hey, you can require your tenant optionee to make all the repairs to the property. It's totally no maintenance. Do you find that to be true? And is that even legal?
It's a fine line between illegal and legal, right?
Right.
Uh, we both know that you can put anything into your contract that you want to put into your contract,
That's right.
period. Okay. So my leases probably did the same thing. I used to say you're responsible because I call them homeowners in training. Right. And I
Right.
would tell them right flat out, say, guys, if you were financing this property at the bank, you would not be calling the banker in the middle of the night, telling them you have a leaky toilet.
That's
Right.
right.
I'm your bank. All right. Look at me as your bank. You're a homeowner in training. And I would say they're responsible for minor repairs and maintenance up to $500 and all this kind of stuff. Right.
Okay.
You can actually do that in some states. Some states you cannot, and you have to kind of take a look and see what the tenant landlord laws allow or don't allow. I can tell you not to even try with capital expenditures. It's just not going to fly.
Yeah.
And usually, if a tenant is going to complain, those are the items that they would complain about. Furnace goes out, air conditioning goes out, those types of things. You as the still owner of the property, okay, are responsible for those in any state that I'm aware of. You cannot pass those on. Not in a residential property, residential lease. Okay.
Right.
I generally do not have a problem with up to the $500. Really don't. And that's how I explain it to my tenants. I say, guys, you're going to light bulbs go out. small problems, leaky toilets, those types of things. As a homeowner, you're going to have to take care of those. I expect you to do it as a tenant optionee in these properties. Now, if you want me to do it, I'll come and do it for you, but I'm going to charge your ass for it. Big time. Okay. Um,
Right.
but generally, I don't have that problem. Now, I will say this. Okay. Again, most of these issues are moot points unless you get taken to court about it.
Right.
Tenant landlord court. And in a lot of states, a judge might look at you and say, Bill, you can't do that. You cannot pass repairs and maintenance on to the tenant. Yeah. So, but I'm willing to risk that
Right.
and say, hey, you are liable up to the first $500. But it
Right.
really is dependent on your tenant landlord law in your particular state, whether you can get away with it or not. But again, it's a moot point unless it gets, challenged. It's almost like SEC laws. A good friend of mine who's an SEC attorney says, dude, it's like driving, 120 miles an hour in a 70-mile-an-hour zone. Everything's good till you see the blue lights,
That's
right?
right. Well, that's like a tax deduction. Any deduction's legal until you're audited.
It sure is. Yeah.
You know.
I'm a tax guy, man. Hey, I'm one of those tax preparers that if there is justification for it under the law, I'm going to take the deduction. And I had some clients that I used to have to give to my partner before I sold out my partnership. They just couldn't stand it. They were so freaky. They did not want to take any deduction. It was almost like, hey, unless the IRS code says I can deduct it, I don't want you to. And I'm the exact opposite. My feeling on tax deductions is unless the code specifically says I cannot, I'm going to.
Well, I always say that when it comes to taxes, my favorite line is from that Tom Cruise movie, The Firm,
Uh-huh.
where he asked Gene Hackman. He says, "You want me to break the law?" And Gene Hackman says, "No, I don't want you to break it. I want you to bend it as far as you possibly
As
can
far as you
before it
possibly
breaks."
can. Yep.
That's right.
Mine too, man. And so, we can liken our leases that way until it gets
Right.
challenged, and there
Right.
is no landlord jail.
That's right.
Yeah, the
Well,
the worst thing that can happen if a tenant takes you to court, and guys, I hope you understand. Neither of us are advocating that you ought to do stuff that would get you taken to court, right?
that's
You
right.
have to decide what is comfortable for you. But I'm very comfortable negotiating with my tenant optionees and saying, hey, here's the lease. If they agree to it, they agree to it. If there's something they don't like about it, hey, tell me and we'll talk about it, right? But if you just sign it, then I expect you to honor the lease, unless you want to take me to court and Judge Look says, Bill, you can't do that, right? And I'll say, sorry, Your Honor, I won't do it again.
And that's important. Once you're before that judge and he tells you to your face, you can't do that, it's best that you don't do it again.
That's exactly right.
But of course, you have to get to court for that to happen. And when you're a new investor, you don't understand this. But when you've done hundreds of deals and you look back over them and you say, okay, I've sold 100 properties on a lease and option, and with the same lease and these same requirements, and I've been in court twice,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and then you decide, is it worth, asking for those things to be taken care of?
Yep.
Go ahead.
My big thing is in taking a look at risk, right? People say, what's the risk on this? My question that I always ask myself is, what is the worst thing that can happen?
That's right.
Yeah, if I carry this out, what is the worst thing that can happen? And if I can live with the worst thing, I'm going to do it,
Exactly.
right? I'm going to do it. Now,
Exactly
if I
right.
cannot live with the worst thing, then I'll back up and say, well, what's the next worst thing? And how
Right.
far can I go with the thing? But that's
That's
just how I've lived my years of life, right? And it has served me well, you know and that's the way I look at it. And an attorney friend of mine told me one time, says, dude, when somebody says that's illegal, the first thing you need to do is not take it at face value, but say, show me the rule or reg, right? Show me
exactly.
the law that says I cannot do this, or show me the regulation that says I cannot do this. Don't show me what your interpretation might be,
That's exactly right. I agree totally. Because, the penalty for breaking that law may be so insignificant that it just doesn't matter.
Well, if for the landlord thing, right? It would just be that I would have to pay the repairs.
Exactly.
So, I might have had to have paid those anyway. Yeah, because as I said, there's no landlord jail for that. Now, you've got to be careful when you read the rules and regs, because there may be some that might, have financial penalties with it.
Right.
But you got to understand the tenant landlord law so you know which ones have penalties, which ones, it's so minor that it doesn't make any difference.
That's right. And I just want to just back up what you said a little bit ago. We're not encouraging anyone to violate laws and do things that they shouldn't be doing. I think if your purpose in business is to make a profit and treat people fairly, you're not trying to put an unfair burden on them.
Right.
But you are expecting them to take care of minor repairs, which,
Exactly.
a lot of people that rent houses do anyway. Just
Yes.
because they don't want the hassle of calling the landlord, waiting on a repair person, and all that sort of thing.
Right.
And, and that's one of the questions I would ask people, when I did lease options. Are you handy around the house? Because, you are expected to take care of minor repairs.
Exactly.
So, they know what's going to be happening. We do this with our land contracts now. When we put people in on a land contract, we actually purchase a home warranty for them for the first year. It's
Right.
a housewarming gift. It
Mhm.
makes sure that any repair that happens, they're looking at 50 to 75 bucks out of pocket max. It's a big peace of mind thing for them. And here's the bottom line. If it costs you $750, which I think is what we're paying for them right now, you're paying for it with their money anyway. The down
Right.
payment they gave you or the option consideration. So, and it's really just insurance for you because, you don't have to worry about getting a house back where the AC shot and nobody took care of it, or,
Exactly.
something serious has gone out and they didn't do anything.
Exactly. Now let me ask you this, since you mentioned that on land contracts, do you require being able to go in and inspect the property under a land contract?
Not under a land contract. They own the place.
Right.
So, I mean, they're a homeowner. I mean, you don't hear the bank coming in. So, I mean, they can use that both ways. Hey, I'm the bank. You don't call me for repairs. You understand you own this house. And the
Right.
bank doesn't call you and say, hey, I'm coming in to do an inspection. So,
Right. Right. And the reason I ask is I have seen that in land contracts before, and I thought it rather interesting
no,
that it
now
was there.
certainly during a lease and option, I don't. It's been, like I said, it's been quite a while since I've done those, and I don't think we really had an inspection clause in our lease for even those, but certainly not for a land
Right.
contract.
I
No.
do for my leases,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
then it's optional. I don't have to do it.
Right.
And generally, I don't, because the lease is no longer than a year anyway.
Right.
So I'm not going to go in there like every quarter and inspect. I saw one in a installment installment sales contract. I thought, oh, okay.
No, I can't imagine going to purchase a home and the seller having the right to come in and look at their, at their discretion. I would have a problem with that.
I probably would too.
The Sub2 Deals Show with your host, Sub2 expert William Tingle. We'll be right back. Hey Sub2ers, have you been trying to learn how to invest in real estate? It can take you years to learn the ropes on your own. How many people do you know who have been looking into real estate investing for years, but have never bought a single house? Do you have shelves full of courses but lack the courage to get out there and close on that first deal? Are you tired of so-called coaches who always seem to have just one more thing to sell you that you absolutely must have to be successful? Are you tired of trying to piece it all together with YouTube videos and free forms found on the internet? Is that really any way to build a business? William Tingle has been coaching real estate investors all over the country for over 16 years. And if you are ready, he can show you how to buy all the houses you want, anywhere you want, without ever having to ask a banker for one thin dime. Contact William today at sub2deals.com and schedule your free 30-minute strategy session. Talk it over, and if you think you're finally ready for success, he'll get you going. Back to the show, the Sub2 Deals Show, with your host, Sub2 expert William Tingle.
and we touched on this a little bit earlier, but what are you seeing right now as far as how the banks are treating a lease purchase as a refinance? Is that even happening?
It depends on the lender. Okay. Um, because it's really not a refinance. We used to talk about it like being a refinance, but it's really not a refinance because there's no financing on the property right now.
Right.
Okay. Now, what I have found in a lot of cases is that the lender will choose to use the non-refundable option fee and apply it to the down payment. Right. So they would say, okay, your down payment is X amount of dollars on this property. We're going to let this amount count as the down payment, so you don't have to come up with additional cash out of pocket. Right. I have seen that. But again, it's going to vary from lender to lender, right?
Right.
But I have my people work with a mortgage loan broker,
Right.
right? And I kind of say, hey, here's the guy's name. You need to go talk to him, and he'll kind of walk you through and tell you what your what needs to be changed in order for you to qualify for the loan, and all this kind of good stuff. So I really don't hound them about that. Um, yeah, so that's right. And in fact, I saw this same question not too long ago. Some guy was saying, "Oh, well, I'm finding that lenders just will not treat the option fee as part of the down payment." Well, he obviously didn't know what he's talking about, because I still have it done. He's come find out later he's completed one deal.
Oh
So,
yeah.
you know, and it hasn't even gotten to the time where the people have to qualify yet. I'm not running into it, William, as much now, quite honestly, because I do a lot of installment sales contracts. So I
Right.
finance the exercise of the option myself.
Well, I know when I was doing lease options, a big thing was, let's say it's $100,000 house and they give you $5,000 as option consideration. Well, that when they go to buy, that five is typically going to get counted toward a down payment.
Right.
But you'd boost them up with all these big rent credits and things like that. I don't, I'm the way I understand it, rent credits aren't really the way to go these days. Is that right?
Absolutely not. Yeah. And here's the problem with rent credits. Since Dodd-Frank, right?
Oh
And,
yeah.
don't even get me started on that. Dodd-Frank kind of has a little clause in there that says any periodic payment that serves to reduce the purchase price is looked at as financing. Okay.
Okay.
And the reason that you don't want that to happen is that's a sure sign of a disguised sale. So if you ever get into a court situation, again, it's a moot point unless it's challenged in court, right? But that is just one thing when you go to, if you were taken to court, that it would be looked at as a sale and not as a lease and option deal. Okay.
Yeah, and
The
that
Internal Revenue Service also looks at that as indicative of a sale.
right. And if you found yourself in court over a broken lease or whatever the case may be with the lease option, and then it turns into a disguised sale situation, then you open up the Dodd-Frank can of worms. Oh my
Yep.
God.
Oh, yeah, it can be a big problem. It can
Yeah,
be a big problem. Yeah,
that's when you get into some stuff there that might not be worth it.
that absolutely not worth it. And somebody says, "Well, that's never been tested." You're absolutely right, right? And I'm not going to say that it hasn't been, because I've not followed all of those, right? But
Right.
I don't know of any situation where rent credits have actually triggered a disguised sale with Dodd-Frank. But who knows? I don't want to be the test case, because the ramifications of that are more than what I would want to deal with. Talk about my worst case scenario of what's the worst thing that can happen. That would probably be one of them.
Oh yeah, I agree.
So I don't want that situation. Now, what
So,
what I do instead of rent credits, if I were going to do this, I would do seller concessions. So I might say, okay, if I were going to allow $200 a month to be credited, as rent credits, treated as rent credits, that's what, 20, Is that 24,000? And 2,400, right? I would say instead that I would do X percentage of seller concessions, right? Which is just another reduction. You say, I'll pay this much in closing cost or something,
Right.
is what I would do
Yeah.
instead. And somebody says, well, I offer rent credits. Well, I don't offer them, right?
Yeah.
I look at it this way. And maybe it's just kind of a silly or naive way of looking at it, but I'm saying, dude, if the deal is a good enough deal, it's a good deal by itself. Why do I have to say I'm going to give rent credit?
That's right.
But that's just me,
Yeah.
but you bring back memories of rent credits. I knew a guy who used to give 50% rent credits.
Oh yeah, I've heard of those. Yeah. Sure
Man,
have.
50, and another guy says, yeah, I'd give 100% rent credit. Well, that is definitely considered a sale. I don't know whether people realize that, but if you're going to give somebody 100% rent credit, which means that everything they pay is applied to the purchase price of the house, all you're doing is financing the sale for them.
That's zero financing.
That's
That's
right.
0% financing.
It absolutely is.
I would buy a ton of houses with 100% rent credit.
Hey,
I'd
dude, we
buy
used
on
to.
lease option all day long. Yeah,
We used to
that's right.
30 years ago.
That's exactly right. Well, let me ask you. You do all these lease options and where how do you find good tenant optionees and not the people that'll tear the place up and move out and not buy?
Oh, man. You know what? The old ways still work. Bandit signs
Yeah,
still work. A for sale by owner sign in front of the property still works. I have, you can do Facebook ads now in some of these like garage sale, the local
right. The
um,
marketplace.
marketplace,
Yeah.
right? You can do ads in there. I had one of my private coaching clients post one of those in, gosh, I think it was in Oregon, right? He had 400 people sign up to ask him about his property. It was wild.
Wow.
400 people. So those things still work. And believe it or not, I have realtors. Well, they're actually acting in the capacity of a leasing agent, but they're still realtors. Most of them still licensed, right? But I'll pay a realtor half month to a month's rent to bring me a good tenant optionee.
Yeah.
So those
And
are some ways.
yeah. Um, and you have success with that. I mean, how do you find these realtors? Most realtors that I've met, and I say most because there are a few, and I mean, I even work with some. How do you recommend finding a realtor that will send you leads on that?
I call them.
Just call them up and
I
say,
did,
hey,
doesn't that sound kind of silly, right? But you can't place an ad, say, I'm looking for a realtor that'll bring me tenant optionees. Okay. So it's going to be like a personal relationship type thing. I'll sometimes call them up and I'll say, hey, yeah, I'm an investor here in Nashville, Tennessee, or I'm an investor in the Tri-Cities area, and I'm beginning to invest in Nashville. My partners and I are in Nashville. We're going to have some properties that we like to sell and I don't say lease and option, right? I say lease purchase type of arrangement. They understand the term lease purchase, okay? Better than they do lease and option, right? So I'll say I've got properties I want to sell on a lease purchase type of arrangement. And we're going to need some people to maybe kind of bring us some tenant optionees, right? And is that something you can help us with? And if they can, they'll say yes. And if they can't, they'll usually say, well, we don't do that, right? And if they say that, we just kind of move on. But it's going to be a situation where you're going to call them and just talk with them. It's just a conversation.
and it's just a numbers game. I mean, the
Yep.
and know now that the multi-million-dollar producer is probably not your Huckleberry.
Oh, absolutely. You look for the ones who are just starting out
Right.
because they're
Yeah.
hungry. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you kind of train them how you want them to work with you.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, because I read some article, I don't know, it's been the past few months about how many real estate agents there are, and the average real estate agent only makes like $18,000 a year
Yep.
because most of them don't produce. They
Yep.
just, yep. Okay. Well, I'll tell you, Bill, I could talk all day about lease options with you, but we've got, I guess, a limited amount of time here. Um, I know that you also teach as well as invest yourself. Can you tell everybody how they can reach you if they want to learn more?
Oh, absolutely, guys. And well, this has been great. And you're like me, I could talk all day. My granny used to say I approached every subject with an open mouth. So it's still
That's right.
it is still true. Uh, but yeah, if anybody has a question about anything that we talked about today, I'd love for them to just reach out. They can just shoot me an email at bill@billwalston.com, or if they follow me on Facebook, hit me up with a private message. I'm easy to
Okay.
get up with. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And easy to talk to. I tell you, man, I've had a great time today. After I stopped doing lease options, I said I was kind of through with them. And I even joke with people and say, friends don't let friends do
Do
lease
lease
options.
options.
But
Well,
I can see where you might change my mind if I talk to you for very long.
yeah. Well, here's the important thing. I know there are a lot of people out there say, "Oh, don't do lease options. Lease options get you in trouble. Don't do this with lease options." I always preface what I say. A properly structured lease option is a beautiful thing. Now, if you just halfway do it, or listen to some of these people that say they're teaching you how to do lease options, but they're doing it the wrong way, yeah, they're not going to be easy to do. But there are a lot of old timers out there who learned how to put these together the right way, and they are still a good strategy if they're properly used.
Okay. Sounds that way. Well, Bill, I certainly appreciate you coming on with us today and talking to us about lease options. Again, I know that some of my students are interested in, especially selling with lease options, but I'm kind of out of the loop, so I wanted to bring somebody on that's out there in the trenches every day. And you've certainly delivered a lot of information. We certainly appreciate it.
Cool. I've enjoyed it, man. Anytime.
Okay. Okay, subtours, there you have it from the lease option expert, Mr. Bill Walston. You got the contact information. We'll drop that stuff in the show notes where you can contact him directly. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Sub 2 Deals show and get out there and buy some houses.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Sub 2 Deals Show with William Tingle. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe. And for more great content and to stay up to date, visit sub2deals.com, on Facebook at Sub 2 Deals. We'll catch you next time.